Good afternoon and welcome to the show. I'm Jim Flyzik. During today's show, we will discuss best practices with data center consolidation strategies in the federal government. With me today on the show are Mike Krieger, the Deputy CIO at the U.S. Army, Ed Dorris, the CIO at the OCC, Department of Treasury, Mary Given, the Deputy Director for Office of Information Services at NRC, Vaughn Stewart, the Chief Technical Evangelist at Pure Storage, Tony Evans, Director Worldwide Defense Systems at Schneider Electric, and Chris Steele, Chief Solutions Architect, Software AG Government Solutions. Let's talk about progress. Let's see what's going on around town with the data center. Let's start with Mike Krieger of Army. Mike, can you give us some examples of some progress you see being made with data center consolidation at the Army?
Yeah, sure, Jim. Good afternoon, and thanks for the opportunity today.
Absolutely.
I think the Army's making significant progress. I don't think doing data centers is a core Army function.
Well, it probably wouldn't find it on your mission statement, would we?
No, so our intent is to migrate applications and storage to either DISA core data centers or commercial. And we've got over 1,200 data centers by the OMB definition. And as of yesterday, we've closed 281.
Okay.
And we have 17 pending. So we really believe this is a good thing, but we're changing the focus now. Instead of closing data centers, we're going to continue to do that, but our focus is now going to be on modernizing, virtualizing, and migrating applications. I think that's the bigger problem and more value for the government to do.
There's some excellent points, too. They're very, very well said in other strategies surrounding data center consolidations. Ed Dorris, how about Department of Treasury? I know a little bit about that place from the past, but how are you guys doing with progress on data center consolidation?
Good. We've been pretty busy. As you know, OCC regulates 1,600 plus national banks, overseeing $10.5 trillion in assets, and there's been a lot going on in this space over the last couple of years, which has really put some pressure on us in terms of optimizing our data center effectiveness efficiencies. We did co-locate back in December 2012. We didn't have as many as data centers as the Department of Defense, but we had several disparate data centers, and we're now operating and running our data center at a commercially owned and facilitated location. It went very well. We did the planning for it. We hit the marks in terms of schedule. And we're now benefiting by having the power, floor space, and cooling we need to take on some of the challenges and opportunities around big data, our data analytics programs, moving forward in that area. It's been a good success story here for OCC. That was phase one. Phase two, we're focused on expanding our disaster recovery capability in-house. We'll be moving on with that over the next couple of years. Wow,
sounds great. A lot of great progress. You must have had a lot of good training as you worked your way up through your career from some of the other folks you worked with.
Back at Treasury, Jim, right, yes.
Just a
good mentor, Jim.
Ed worked for me at one point in time over the years. But anyway, hey, Chris Steele, how about over Software AG, Government Solutions? How are you guys positioned in this? What are you doing? Progress being made supporting your customers as they move forward on this stuff?
Right. So we see three different areas. The first of which is integrating the existing applications you have. Right.
Yeah,
so we see. Right. As Mike said, there's a lot of siloed applications out there, and the first step is really being able to integrate all that data across them. Once you've been able to do that, the second part is really helping the customers optimize the resources that they have. And one of our new technologies is in-memory computing. So what we see is this large move to being able to more readily utilize the amount of RAM that you have within the data center, so that instead of buying more servers, you're more, optimizing the ones you have, making better use of them, moving that data from the database into the application server. And then finally, the biggest area that we see is really around portfolio management. So having the ability to understand what you have out there today. A lot of agencies have all these systems up and running, and they don't know what's running on them. They keep these systems alive because they're afraid that shutting them down might shut down a mission-critical application. So through portfolio management, having the ability to see, not only what's running, but what the different dependencies within those applications are, is of a huge benefit to our agencies.
Yeah, that's great. We're developing a little theme here, too. In fact, in the shows prior, we used to call this data center virtualization and data center consolidation because we talked about the fact that you really want to look at, you don't want to just move stuff as is if you have the opportunity to modernize and virtualize in the process. And I think a lot of you are hitting on those same things. Mary Given, how about over at the NRC? How's progress there with data center consolidation?
So we are in the beginning stages. We are making good progress. Unlike Army, we only have 9 data centers. We are, right now, we have a big initiative to move or consolidate one of the data centers. And in a couple years, we plan on another couple. Our ultimate goal is really to get to 2 data centers, 1 core and a backup. Also, lots of virtualization has been said here. We also have, we've constructed a new core data center. It's really focused on green IT.
Okay.
And although we haven't implemented the power tools, the power monitoring tools at this point, that I think is going to help us with the consumptions and know areas to improve there. Let's see. So the virtualization, and we also, I talked about the private cloud.
Right.
We also have a private cloud initiative.
Yeah, we're going to talk about cloud a little bit too here in a minute.
Yeah. So we have a big private cloud initiative. We're in the design phase right now. We haven't begun to construct it yet, and we're excited about that.
Oh, good. Terrific. I'm interested to hear a little bit more about that when we talk cloud here in a couple of minutes. Vaughn, Stewart, how about Pure Storage? How are you positioned in this data center consolidation space, and how are you supporting customers moving forward?
Hey, good afternoon, Jim. Thanks for having us on the show. You know, over the course of the last decade, there's been an emergence in technologies that have really shifted the way that we operate and run our data centers. It's part of the modernization, the virtualization, which are leading towards the initiatives such as consolidation. And during that same time frame, we've seen a 100-fold gain in CPU performance, networking speed, but disk storage has remained flat. And the net result is that you see globally challenges around providing enough storage performance to service these larger and more consolidated workloads.
Sure, the big data.
Exactly. So what our mission at Pure Storage is to bring flash memory technology into the storage space by making it affordable, scalable, service-centric, which is an automated element of supporting these initiatives, as well as just redefining what availability means, and we kind of call that always on. So the end result is the performance to drive larger workloads, to do it in a fraction of the footprint, so that you can put more data in your data center, and that means also, you know, reducing the power and the cooling requirements. Yeah,
really is some interesting watching the complexities and the challenges out there in industry as data just continues to explode, and you try to keep up with that with both the storage as well as the processing capability to process that data and the analytic tools and everything else. It's in a way it's exciting, in a way it's a major challenge. Tony Evans, tell us a little bit about Schneider Electric and how you guys are supporting data center consolidation and your customer base.
Sure, Jim. Good afternoon. So at Schneider Electric, we produce the power, cooling, and management systems that support the physical layer of the data center environment. We're currently working with on several federal, DoD, and commercial initiatives for consolidation. What we're finding is that the result of that energy savings and footprint reduction, where you can actually take that footprint and monetize it elsewhere. We're also working with several ESPCs that have just started off, and we're showing preliminary results in that area as well.
Yeah, those energy savings performance contracts, I got really excited about them and was talking about them around town, and I think we're seeing pockets of agencies jumping on it, and I think a lot of agencies aren't even aware that some of those are out there and that, you know, for that type of support, but it's very interesting concepts there going on. Let's talk about, cloud was brought up, let's talk about cloud. You know, you're doing data center consolidation, but then everybody's talking about cloud computing, everybody's talking about managed services, everybody's talking, how do they fit together? Let's start with Ed Dorris. Ed, how does cloud and managed services fit into this strategy?
We're relatively conservative in that area, but we do focus on a couple of areas. One, is it a commodity, right? This is something industry can do better than we can do internally. Cost, quality, as well as the customer experience. So there's a couple of key areas we're focused on. Mobile device management, we've moved that to the cloud. We're rolling out our smartphones this fall and heading in that direction, and we've sourced that through a cloud strategy. Our PC image refresh, device management, managed service / cloud opportunity there. Our email, when we did our data center consolidation a couple of years ago, we wanted to minimize the risk around, you know, losing email connectivity during that process. So we moved it to the cloud. It's been very efficient, very effective. And then last, but our ticket and service desk management, we put that in the cloud. Use a product called ServiceNow.
Right.
So we're moving in a direction here. We are, the key for us is if we can find an industry, a source that can do it in a manner that's cost-effective, high quality, and then we can free up resources to focus on more mission-critical activities around our applications.
Yeah, I think what you're doing makes logical sense. I mean, you start with things, that are more commodity-based, administrative in nature, get some experience there, and then look at what else is possible down the road. I think it just sounds like a complete strategy to me. Mary, how about over NRC? How's cloud and managed services figure into this move to get down to 2 data centers?
So I think a key component of our strategy is cloud computing. And as I mentioned earlier, we have an effort underway, and hopefully we'll have that completed in a year. Managed services, we have a number of managed services already, and I think they'll be ready to go on the private cloud. That is in our new constructed data center. So, and we are looking, I think, for more opportunities to manage more of the services we have. We actually have our financial system right now on a public cloud.
Oh.
So and most of them will go to the private that we're working on now, and eventually our ultimate goal would be to look at maybe a hybrid situation or a public, but we just need to make sure the security meets the standards at that point.
Same idea. Take it step by step. We'll look at it as we go along.
Phased-in approach.
Yeah. Mike Krieger, how about cloud managed services fitting into your strategy? I'm guessing it's a cornerstone of sorts.
So it is, Jim, and I agree with everything Ed and Mary said. We started with email back in 2011. Migrated 1.4 million people to DISA, so it was a government to government.
Right.
Went very well. I mean, that was the right thing to do. Mm-hmm. The challenge for us now, like Mary said, is security in private commercial clouds. And so, the DoD's defined 6 levels. The first 4 unclassified, level 5 NIPRNet, so FOU, PII, and level 6 SIPRNet. And so we've been meeting with NSA for about 4 months now, and we've got now an NSA architecture for how industry can do NIPRNet and SIPRNet. And we're going to share that with industry through an RFP for unified communications. And assuming we can work that out, I think there's an opportunity. We've got to decide, what do you put in government data centers? We think that's probably ERPs and national security. But we think almost everything else can probably go into commercial facilities that do level 5 and level 6. So there's a huge opportunity here.
Sure.
So we think, we've done enterprise email. We think the next is telephony, UC, presence and awareness, voice, video, chat. Mm-hmm. That's probably the next big one to modernize and move to industry. And then, of course, we're very interested in VDI for desktop, although we think that's probably installation by installation. Even with flash memory, we don't think you do that over the network yet. And then it's the analytics, both for Intel and probably for cyber, right? The next big thing is going to be the cloud analytics, where you put all this data you're gathering into the cloud and be able to follow the business rules and get alerts. So that's where we think it's heading. But the challenge now is, so what do you put in government facilities? And then what do you do in industry facilities that meet the security standards, as Mary said?
Yeah, interesting, very interesting. Tony Evans, how about cloud managed service? I guess in nature, kinds of things you do, by definition, I guess I think of power as sort of being a managed service of sorts. But can you comment on how you see that figuring into the strategies?
So we do, but in the cloud and computing and managed services environment, the key is that the data center has to be more agile than the traditional typical data center. The response to that is that, when a customer has a demand, it's an on-demand need, you really have to respond to that. So we try to focus on making our design scalable and modular to the extent where you can add capacity on demand, as capacity would be added with an additional server as users join into the system.
Interesting. Yeah, agile environments. It's kind of like got agile programming, got agile data center builds. Chris Steele, what do you think? How's managed service and cloud work into your strategies?
So to jump on what Mike said, it's traditionally security has been the biggest concern, and now that we see with all these FedRAMP certified data centers popping up, we see a lot more migration to the cloud. And as that's happening, the big question with the customers becomes, how do I integrate my data in the cloud with my data on premise? Because, again, we don't have all of our data out there. We want to be able to run the analytics, and we want to run the analytics between those 2 data sets. So really, integration of the data, both on premise and within the cloud, will continue to be an issue for some time to come. And building on that theme we talked about earlier with in-memory computing, having the ability to be able to pull that over from the cloud, store it, have it cached locally on-premise to run the analytics and be able to do that all in real time is really what we're focused on.
Yeah, excellent point there. I didn't think about that integration of the data as you're moving these things around and so forth. Vaughn, Stewart, how about a pure storage? How about managed services and cloud, and how do you work that into your thinking of how you're supporting your customer base?
Sure. So our view on cloud computing and managed services is that this is the modern model for data center operations. We're designing an infrastructure technology in terms of a storage device. It has to inherently be multi-tenant, support various workloads. That means we have to put programmability into the system. We have to support standardized sets of APIs, like a RESTful set of APIs, or the predominant vendor sets of APIs, be it them from Microsoft or VMware. This allows the storage resources to then be consumed in an on-demand manner, leveraging policies that are supported within the infrastructure, so that we can have this chargeback systems, on-demand provisioning, and drive a lot of agility in services. This means for us, we put a lot of design into this system itself so that the storage device doesn't require the tuning and configurations that you have with disk storage, and instead services can be defined solely in software. They can be defined at day zero and can be defined through simple software changes as the needs for the application grow over time. That is something that's very different than in disk storage technology historically, where you literally have to move the data to different forms of storage to be able to meet the level of service that you need.
Yeah, interesting thing. And, we've had conversations on prior shows about these changing trends are creating some challenges with understanding how to write service level agreements and changing procurement models and acquisition approaches, because it is a different model, and it's a challenge to some of the traditional ways that we used to do acquire goods and services in government. We want to talk about some benefits and, of course, and some lessons learned. But I think first, before we go there, let's take a short break. You're listening to the Federal Executive Forum on Federal News Radio, 1500 AM. Welcome back to the Federal Executive Forum on Federal News Radio, 1500 AM. I'm Jim Flyzik, here with Mike Krieger from the U.S. Army, Ed Dorris from OCC, Mary Givvines from NRC, Vaughn Stewart from Pure Storage, Tony Evans from Schneider Electric, and Chris Steele from Software AG Government Solutions. We're talking data center consolidation. We talked about progress. We talked about how cloud and managed services fit in. Let's talk about some of the benefits you're seeing. I guess the obvious one would be some cost savings, but are there some other benefits you see coming that resulting from going through these efforts? Let's start with Mary Givvines over at NRC. Mary, what are some of the benefits you see coming out of these efforts?
Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, we are in the beginning stages, and I think for us the biggest benefit right now is virtualization. Mm-hmm. And with that, you get scalability, agility. We're also seeing some savings, of course, in space. We're able to take the space and reallocate it when we start to consolidate, and we have one consolidation coming up. And just a better understanding of our energy consumption in general. And I think that this is going to set us up nicely, even though we haven't seen it yet. But I think come May, we'll start to see some improvement in our security posture as an agency.
Yeah, actually, I've had that argument made too, that, when you do data center consolidation, it gives you a chance to do a holistic look at security again, because over the years we've been putting Band-Aids on everything. This gives you a chance to reflect and look at the big picture again and readdress some of those security matters. Mike Krieger, how about benefits over at the Army? What do you see some of the biggest benefits coming out of these efforts?
So I think Mary's right. I mean, CIOs manage three polarities: security, operational effectiveness, and dollars. And security is probably the biggest one. The problem we've always had is users that host applications don't keep the basic infrastructure modernized. So we're still running Server 2003. Right. And so what this forces is that you're going to do infrastructure as a service or platform as a service. You're going to force modernization at the OS level and the OE level. And then you can get the users or the application owners to focus on the application. So I think you're huge increases in security. Obviously, the operational effectiveness is going to increase dramatically. Mm-hmm. And we pay for what we use now. So you've got elasticity in the cloud. You don't have to over-provision the application. Right. You now pay for what you use. You can grow or go down as you need it. And then the final thing, Chris mentioned it, is portfolio management. Mm-hmm. So you know, the first option for a CIO to portfolio manager is kill the application.
Right.
But we're finally getting that look now. You know, what do we have? What do we need? What are we going to move?
Right.
And my option to all my domain owners is consider kill first,
Yeah.
and then modernize, virtualize, and move. So from a CIO, this is huge opportunity to reduce the portfolio within the Army.
Yeah, I know just on my own personal computer at home, I love running that program that shows you how often you actually use these applications. And some of them come up and they're running and it says last used like 4 years ago. You realize maybe I don't need that one anymore. Ed Dorris, how about benefits? What benefits are you seeing that are coming out of these efforts?
Well, since we moved to the data center in 2012, the co-location facility, our availability has been impeccable, flawless. It's the operational excellence in terms of the commercial facilities, their power, all their maintenance processes, flawless. Anything that's a potential risk, we're notified in advance. So that's taking a big load off of my workforce, where we can, again, focus on more value-add activities. Likewise, able to respond or be agile. Our data needs or growth patterns at OCC over the last couple of years have ranged from 26 to 46% a year. It's taking off. So we've been able to respond accordingly and provide the appropriate storage to accommodate this need, as well as introduce new capabilities like grid computing. Again, having that power, that capacity to introduce these new technologies readily has really made a difference for us in our data analytics programs.
Excellent points. Excellent points. Vaughn, Stewart, how about over at Pure Storage? What are some of the benefits you're seeing your customers are achieving, or you are achieving yourself as you're going through this?
Yeah, so we're helping customers materialize a lot of the benefits that are being shared by those on the panel. And so you can look at this through two lenses. The very tactical element, which is when you move from disk storage to flash storage, you can drive initiatives forward. So there's been a lot of challenges around the VDI and user computing space over the last 5 years. So making that a reality for many, or helping customers move to this 100% virtualized infrastructure. You know, that last 10 or 20% of applications, the most critical and demanding ones, just haven't been a fit for virtualization with disk, and you move them to flash, and now you can have ubiquitous benefits from a virtualized infrastructure layer to give you a lot more agility, mobility in that space. If you back up and look at it from a strategic perspective, right, we are helping customers become more agile. Flash storage eliminates a lot of the architectural constraints around disk and allows you to adopt new technologies or modernize your platforms with less effort in terms of the architectural layer, while also increasing the success factor. It's flash memory. There is no performance bottleneck you're gonna incur that was unplanned for, like you would have had in the past. But probably the biggest gain when you look forward is, you know, the density and the reduction in power resource consumptions from this storage technology is going to allow data centers, whether they're the data centers that you're contracting out or they're your own, to significantly shrink in terms of the real estate required to hold the data sets that you're storing today, and put you in a better position to hold all the data that you're going to have to store in the future, because we're continuing to collect, analyze, et cetera, and probably add decades of new life onto these facilities.
Wow, exciting stuff. I'm getting excited for this stuff. Chris Steele, what do you think? What are some of the benefits you're seeing coming out of these efforts?
Well, I think Mike covered most of my points. I agree completely with everything he said, and focusing back on the portfolio management. Now that you've gone through the exercise of consolidating the data center, you've gained that visualization into the application landscape. So now that you have the data, you're in a better position to be able to rationalize the applications that you own. And also, you can now start building an IT roadmap that allows you to sort of move forward. And with the initiatives like Portfolio Stat, you're in a lot better position to be able to show ROI and make the decisions that you're going to need to make for the future.
Yeah, so all of a sudden we actually know what we have after all those years of building things out. Tony Evans over at Schneider, what are some of the benefits? I know there's always a danger to be the last one to be asked a question, because you could probably say ditto, but in addition to ditto to what you've heard, are there any other comments you can add to the discussion here in terms of benefits you're seeing?
Sure, Jim. So simply put, we're seeing big improvements in efficiency with our customers. The way you generally measure energy usage in a data center is with power utilization effectiveness, which is a comparison of how much energy the computers use versus the entire environment. And typically in a federal or a DoD data center, you're looking at a range from about 2 to 3, which is probably lagging a little bit behind industry in general. But with an approach where you take a high-density pod, meaning servers and racks and power and cooling, and you make that into a high-density enclave within an existing data center, you can generally get that number down to about 1.35. It's a cost-effective, easily procured solution, rather than building an entire new state-of-the-art facility, which you can generally get the PUE quite a bit lower in a dedicated facility. But again, the advantages and 10 times faster implementation for an enclaved approach. It's a fraction of the capex, and the ROI comes much quicker with that, and that's where we see benefit from our customers.
Yeah, Mary, you have a comment on that?
Yeah, I agree with everything that's been said. I did want to mention that virtualization has really helped us also facilitate modernizing our systems, and we have we have a good example of that. And the other item I wanted to mention with data consolidation and preparing for our core data center, it's really helped us understand our inventory. I didn't realize that was a problem government-wide. I just thought it was with the NRC. So we really have a better handle on our inventory right now.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point. I think a lot of agencies are learning a lot of things when they realize what they have out there, and this is forcing that issue to come forefront. We started talking about lessons learned in this show a couple of months back because the idea here is as you are going through these efforts, it's nice to perhaps help your colleagues and others that are doing it. Some things you learned along the way that might be good advice, or things maybe that didn't go so well that you'd like to discuss. Let's start with Mike Krieger again in Army. Mike, what are some of the lessons you learned along the way here going through this particular effort?
So, as fun as technology is, this is a team sport, and it's really about change management. It has nothing to do with technology. Technology is an enabler. So the Army is a big organization. Getting people to consider giving up their servers and reducing the number of data centers and going off a virtual infrastructure was really hard. Yeah. I think we got over that with enterprise email. We're picking up the speed now. And just as an example, so the U.S. Army Reserve had 100 facilities that had 1 to 6 servers. They had print servers and file servers all over. Right. And when they finally got on board and said, yeah, maybe this is a good idea, they closed them all down. And so the challenge for us is, good, change management, give people the guidance, empower them, get them to recognize this is a good thing because it's more secure, it's more effective, and it's cheaper. And then the organization really starts moving out. And I think that's where we're seeing now. Now, the interesting thing is we don't do fully burdened in government. And so at a lot of data centers, we've got one organization that runs facilities, that pays for the facility, that pays for the power, that pays for the HVAC. We got another organization that paid for the servers. We got another organization that's just paying for a little labor to do the application. So the other thing we're looking at is follow the money, because you've got to figure out what the fully burdened cost is, because some people you're going to ask to modernize, virtualize, and move, you're going to give them a bill that's more than they got today because it's free for them today, but it's not free for the Army. Right, and so this is really about change management, following the money, and then portfolio management. And the technology is good, but that's not the problem.
That's an excellent point. I think it may have been Robert Kennedy. Someone, don't count me on getting the quote right, but it was some said that 1/3 of everyone's against everything, no matter what it is. I mean, if it means change, it's just by human nature, we don't want to change. Ed, what are some of the lessons learned you're experiencing as you work your way through this?
Well, I'll go back to when we co-located and consolidated our data centers. One key thing was keep it simple. Don't try to accomplish all your goals in one activity. We focused on moving the servers and storage devices from the legacy centers to the new. That was it. We didn't try to virtualize. We didn't try to refresh during that time frame. The other thing that related to that is separating the consolidation effort and the resources, establishing a program management office from your day-to-day operations. It's a full-time job, and you don't want to jeopardize what you're doing from a production standpoint. And again, plan, test, rehearse. Make sure your backup, your recovery all that is bulletproof. Because no matter how well you do plan and how well you execute, you're going to rely on that backup.
Sure.
And make sure your vendors are there. If you're working with EMC, have them on site when you're going through those physical moves. It's amazing how they can troubleshoot and figure out why your data isn't showing up the way it should be.
Yeah, excellent point. It could be a career limiting decision by a CIO to not do that planning right, and to not get it right when you begin doing those cutovers.
So, the expectations are high on that Monday morning.
Absolutely, absolutely. I know some of those cutovers, and you're sitting there sweating bullets, just saying, I hope this thing comes up right the way it's supposed to. Mary Given, what do you think are some of the lessons learned? What are some of the things you're learning as you go through this process?
I think the biggest things for us is the resistance to change, as has been said before. Our customers are used to having the physical servers nearby, and now they're going to have to manage remotely. To mitigate that, we are, and this is one of the lessons learned, really engaging them early on to be part of the process, to explain the benefits. So I think that's going to help. The other item is our legacy systems. I think we're finding out that they're taking a lot longer to convert to the cloud. Yeah, and so I think that for planning purposes, we have to factor that in.
Yeah, very good points, very good points. Tony Evans, what do you think some of the lessons learned you're seeing with customers as you work with them through these processes?
So I think a fairly hard lesson learned is that sometimes customers underestimate the mission-critical nature of a consolidated data center. There's a tremendous amount going on in there, and any kind of a lack of availability can really affect mission accomplishment. We're seeing a growing realization that there's a long list of requirements in addition to what type of software or server you're going to use in these environments. For example, where do you put it? Do you use an existing site? What really is going to have a profound impact on efficiency? And, can the existing infrastructure support the high density environment that's going to result? And most importantly, can we achieve the necessary availability from the space to support the mission?
Yeah, excellent points, all excellent points. Vaughn, Stewart, what do you think are some of the lessons learned you're seeing coming out of this exercises?
Yeah, so as we've gone through this global change in how we are operating our data centers, we've seen as a byproduct a tremendous amount of innovation within the storage space. And I think without rat-holing on technologies, I think the best way you can summarize this is that the storage architectures that we used prior to virtualization and consolidation don't hold up well in this new paradigm of clustered servers.
Right.
And so what I will share with you and share with the audience is that your data is going to outlive any software or hardware that you put it on today. Your data is persistent. It's going to remain with you for a long time.
Excellent point.
And so as you look through these new technologies that are emerging around storing your data or accessing your data, what technology is going to give you the best likelihood of success for today and the long haul? We believe that's all flash storage, that any of the combinations with disk storage is just a rehash of what you've had in the past.
Yeah.
And we think this puts you in a position of having success at least for the next decade.
Wow. Yeah, that's excellent point. Excellent point. Not like the days of, where was that tape we had that had that backup on it? But excellent point of the data outliving the platforms we're putting them on. Chris Steele, what do you think? What are some lessons learned you're seeing out there, some things you'd like to pass on?
So to just build on what Vaughn said, one of the things that's come to light is just the fact that data is going to continue to grow, and it's the number of sources that we're pulling that data from is going to continue to grow, from CAT cards to sensor data. The type of data is continuing to change. So we're starting to see a lot of these real-time data streams that are really, at this point, just not we're not able to sufficiently store it quick enough to be able to analyze it. So what we've done is introduce a new technology, complex event processing, that allows us to take and look at these real-time data streams and be able to run the analytics as the data comes through, so that we don't have to store all of it and then run analytics later. We can be able to see in real time what's happening, and that also frees us up from storing it. So if you look at things like sensor data, for instance, a lot of the data, maybe 99% of that coming through, is really uninteresting. It's just basically saying everything's okay, we're within the norm, and what you're looking for is the abnormalities. That's what you're interested in.
Not okay.
Right, so you grab those out of that data stream, you store those for later analysis, you run your analytics on those, but you don't want to be able to have to store all of that irrelevant, just I'm okay type data.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. So we sort of like are doing the filtering on the way in to make sure we're keeping the things that are critical in a place where they're available in real time, whereas some of the other things that maybe are not so interesting, we no longer need to keep up there. Excellent points. I like a lot of that. Now let's talk a little bit. We're talking about progress. We're talking about some of the benefits, lessons learned. We need to now talk a little bit about some of the challenges out there. What are some of the hard things, some of the things that have been getting in the way? But before we do that, let's take a second break. You're listening to the Federal Executive Forum on Federal News Radio 1500 AM. Welcome back to the Federal Executive Forum on Federal News Radio 1500 AM. I'm Jim Flyzik here with Mike Krieger from the U.S. Army, Ed Dorris from the OCC, Mary Givvines from NRC, Vaughn Stewart from Pure Storage, Tony Evans from Schneider Electric, and Chris Steele, Software AG Government Solutions. We're talking data center consolidation. We've been talking about progress, benefits, lessons learned. Now let's talk about some challenges. What are some of the hard things, the things that get in the way, the things that you need to overcome to get where you want to go? Let's start with Mike at Army. Mike, what's some of the challenges you face day to day as you're trying to move forward with this?
So Jim, I think the first thing we all got to realize is this is a journey. You're not going to finish data center consolidation in a week. It might take 3 weeks. And so you got to have that vision that this is going to take us a while to do it. A couple of big issues. So I think a lot of federal organizations, the Army's not unique, is we've been very decentralized from IT.
Sure.
So as technology changed, the IT innovations come from the bottoms up. I don't think you can do that anymore. So what you're seeing now is that there's certain things that are more effective, efficient, secure if they're centralized. And that's the polarity we're trying to manage now. So what do you do centralized, and then what can you do decentralized? The problem for us is the Army's effective on decentralized execution in combat, our basic mission. And so our problem is, so how do you take cloud and deploy it in a sometimes disconnected environment? And we've got to work our way through that. We're making significant progress, but it becomes to what do you do disconnected, and how do you resync when you're connected again? And we got to work our way through that. The other thing we got to continue to work is security. So security is a big deal. I mean, for the government at the unclassified level, it really is how do you protect FOU information? How do you protect personally identifiable information? And do it to the right standard. FedRAMP represents, for DoD, represents level 2, which is unclassified without FOUO, without PII. Where we really want to get to is level 5, which represents FOUO and PII. And of course, we want to do SIPRNet. We're really sensitive about who shares the same hardware in a virtualized environment, and a lot of other things. And so what we got to work with industry on is, so how do you meet the security requirements for us in commercial facilities? Because certainly the innovations in industry, and that's where there's lots of cloud potential, but we've got to work out the security so that we're comfortable on the federal government side that it's secure enough.
Yeah, excellent point. So interesting to watch these generations of computing. The early days, everything was in the mainframe, the big glass house. Then we went to this end user computing and we pushed everything out. Now we're pulling everything back again. It's sort of an interesting process as you watch this unfold. Ed Dorris, what are some of the challenges you face day to day? Some of the things you need to overcome to get where you really want to go with all this?
Well, I'm with Mike. Security, cybersecurity. It's the number one threat. It's the growing concern. These actors, whether they're individual or state actors, they're becoming more sophisticated. They're growing in number. They're being sponsored. So while you're going through your consolidation process, moving to the cloud, whatever your strategy is, plus what you're doing internally around virtualization, refresh, you got to keep on top of your cybersecurity, making sure your perimeter security is where it needs to be. It's up to date. The patching's happening, your continuous monitoring, you're really doing it, right? You're looking at those logs, you're making sure you're seeing what's happening within your environment. And then I'm sure all of us at the table here are keeping abreast of the evolving NIST standards. Rev 4, there's a lot of challenges and opportunities there, right? And it's good stuff. It's good insight into how you should configure your servers, your storage devices.
Yeah.
You need to keep on top of that.
Yeah, excellent points. I mean, cybersecurity, pick up the newspaper any day, you'll find a story in there about some type of breach somewhere or some type of a new malicious code being introduced. It really is a big issue. Mary, anything you think you can add to this comes to mind in terms of some challenges you've been facing?
Yeah, so in addition to what I mentioned earlier about the change management legacy systems, I'd like to add that we're even seeing challenges in our own organization, the IT staff,
Sure.
that are resistant to consolidating. The other thing, of course, is obtaining funds, but more specifically is getting senior executives in the agency to see the importance of this and prioritizing it correctly in the budget with limited constraints that we have right now with budget. So I would think those are the additions I have.
Both excellent points. Chris Steele, what do you think? What are some of the big challenges you think that continue to be sort of like get in the way that you got to overcome to get to where you really want to go?
Yeah, I think probably the biggest challenge has been and will be for some time the ability to plan for the consolidation. So, that starts with understanding your IT landscape, what I have out there, what's running where, and how am I going to consolidate? What are the different dependencies that the platforms, the applications, our business process all have? And I think it's a really huge effort on a lot of agencies' parts to go out and collect all that information. So if you think at how we struggle just to collect asset information, multiply that by 10 when we have to go out and understand not just the assets, but the business processes, the applications, the different platform infrastructure requirements, and all the dependencies within them. So having a portfolio management tool that allows you to be able to collect all that data and then bring that together, that's a big challenge to go out, get all that data, put it into the tool. Once you have that, then you also have to maintain that data. So once the consolidation's done, we're going to continuously want to optimize what we have out there. So keeping that data up to speed and making sure that it's continually input as we continue to change is probably the biggest challenge we see.
Yeah, absolutely. Very good. It's back to that complexity issue, the complex nature of all this. Vaughn, anything you can think of add to a challenge there that you're seeing?
Well, I think I'm going to echo some of the sentiments of those who've spoken previously. I think Mike hit it on the head, actually, particularly in the previous segment, where he shared that data centers are operated by human beings. Right, we're people, right. And we get accustomed to our processes, and sometimes we rely more on the process than really understanding what the mission is.
Right.
And so what we've seen in agencies that have had very successful consolidation efforts, those that achieve the greatest success, I should say, are those that have strong leadership at the top that are challenging their staff to focus on what the mission is and to look at the inventory and to say, if we adopt new technology, what old systems and infrastructure components and software packages can we do away with?
Right.
Because the goal is agility. It's also cost savings.
Right.
And again, we're human beings. We don't. The technology advances usually much more rapidly than our comfort zone does.
There you go. Excellent point. Excellent point. Tony, I want to change the question with you here. We're down to before we run out of time, we're down to about 11 and a half minutes. Want to hear about the panelists' thoughts about where this is all going. What will be different in the future based on these efforts that are going on now? Tony, what's your crystal ball look like down the road here?
So from our lens, we're already at the point where, within the physical infrastructure, integrated, highly managed rack, power distribution, cooling, and management systems are, working together to routinely deliver power utilization efficiencies that are much lower than anything we've seen in the past. So there's already great benefit out there to the industry, to our customers. But, we expect these trends to continue and actually accelerate because there are server technologies out there that will consume less energy. There are certainly some evolutionary cooling technologies out there that will certainly help. and even power technologies that are emerging as well. We feel like the government and industry are going to continue their dependency on IT. That's never going to change. It's only going to increase. But we also feel that the way that these emerging technologies are going to come together, that there's kind of a bright future ahead for energy conservation and helping our customers succeed.
Terrific. Well said. Vaughn, Stewart, what's it look like down the road for you? Where's this all going?
So from an infrastructure provider, flash storage is widely recognized as being the pioneer in the storage industry who brought affordable all-flash storage to market. We are seeing the market hit a tipping point today as the majority of the storage vendors are now offering an affordable all-flash storage platform. So we expect to see that the performance storage market will change from disk-based storage to all-flash over the course of the next 5 years. And I wouldn't be surprised within 2 to start to see the capacity-oriented storage platform shift to flash storage technologies. And I think those who follow at least the storage market are probably raising a few eyebrows or some skepticism there. But I'm highly confident that if we come back in 2 years, this is what we'll be talking about.
Wow, terrific. Well said. Mary Givvines, what's it look like to you? Where's this all going?
I think there's going to be smaller data centers. They're more virtualized. I think there's going to be more energy efficiency in those data centers with some precise monitoring tools. Also, across the government, I think it's an opportunity for more standardization. And so hopefully we will, as government, get out of the business of trying to manage data centers. And finally, I think once security is worked out, that you'll see more and more in the public cloud for government agencies.
Terrific. Well said. Chris Steele, what's this look like? Where's this all going for you?
I agree with Mary. I think that where we're headed is a really good mix of on-premise and cloud-based systems that are properly integrated, where we are pulling data from a variety of different sources and being able to analyze that data like we haven't been able to until now. So now that I've got real-time streaming data along with the ability to mash up, large amounts of this big data, historical data, we'll get to a point where we can run, true real-time analytics, and beyond that, we'll even be able to press into the predictive analytics part where we can actually start taking proactive action.
Yeah, getting out in front of the issues before they actually happen. Yeah, we do shows on big data too, and raises some eyebrows on the same kind of issues you're bringing up there. Ed Dorris, what's this look like down the road? Where's this all going in the future?
Whether you co-locate, you go to the cloud or managed services, you still need to monitor what's going on in your environment. Mm-hmm. And I'm hoping, and I'm seeing trends heading in this direction where the tools, the techniques, the practices around that are going to take off. Around whether it's performance, system availability, cybersecurity, looking at, provisioning your storage on demand, really driving down the risk, the cost, freeing up your resources to focus on more value-add work. I think we're going to see a trend in the monitoring tools, the scanning tools that are out there. That industry will become more usable, more user-friendly. You won't have to go through so much data to get the information that you need to make that decision or identify what that risk is or to mitigate that vulnerability.
Yeah, very well put. Very, very good point there. I think the platforms and the architectures and are going to be in place that things are going to happen that we haven't even dreamed of yet in terms of when we get all this in place. Mike Krieger, what's the future look like for you? Where's this all going?
So I think this is all about the data in the end. Mm-hmm. So, the difference that you're going to see in the future. So when I traveled to Korea, I can now get to my email in Korea because we moved it to DISA, and so it's in the big backbone. But when I want to get to my shared drives, they're still in the Pentagon. Mm-hmm. And doing a VPN from Korea to the Pentagon is a long way, and it was really hard. And so if you move the data to the cloud, then suddenly it's accessible from anywhere by authorized users, and the security is where it needs to be, and the latency is where it needs to be, and the performance is where it needs to be. We've been saying for years you need to separate data from apps, and we're finally seeing ourselves do that. And we're finally seeing the governance of designating authoritative data. And so people are reusing the authoritative data instead of stale data. And all that's a good trend. Data analytics are getting a lot better, and huge operational effectiveness as you do that. But in the end, I've said this before, this is going to be about strong governance, configuration management, network operations, a focus on ITIL services, which government IT guys would rather do technology, but this is really about ITIL services. So now just give you a vignette. So I've got my government iPad, and when I'm at home or travel, I've got an app for UC or an app for a phone, right? When I get in the office, I put it in airplane mode, I plug it in, it becomes my telephone or my UC in my office. Okay, all that's good, but what do I do for a trouble ticket? That's going to be really hard to troubleshoot. And so if we don't have good ITIL processes for trouble ticketing, configuration management, and change management, we'll never be able to provide good quality IT to our users. And so we really, as IT executives, we've got to focus now on governance, configuration management, ITIL processes. In the end, this is good government work and a good partnership with industry. But the technology matters less from where I sit. It's more now about processes and governments.
Terrific, terrific. I'm going to take a few minutes here to reflect on today's show and do a little bit of summarizing. I've taken some notes as we go along here. Progress, we've heard quite a bit, and the progress with big data is forcing progress to rethink these things. Some of the things that impressed me were the applications integration that are being done concurrently with data center consolidation, and portfolio management becomes a key issue to be dealt with as we move this forward. When we talked about cloud, we saw the trend that we start with commodities. We move the things that are, I guess, the easiest to move first, and we begin learning the lessons that way, which sets us up for moving additional things down the road. You got to take into account cost, quality, as well as integration of the data. I think that was an interesting point when we talk cloud there, is how do we keep all the data integrated if we're moving some stuff out, keeping some stuff in. Benefits, we heard a lot about virtualization being an opportunity to get rid of things, to relook at our inventory, to decide what we need to keep and not keep. We talked about space efficiencies, operational effectiveness being improved, and agility. I thought was an interesting point brought up by someone, that we're able to move faster. I think, Ed, you brought that up, how we can now move quicker and be able to react to different types of challenges. In the lessons world, change management's not easy. People are used to doing things the way they've always done things, so anytime you introduce change, it creates some culture issues that need to be worked through. We talked about lessons in testing, that the importance, I think, again, it was Ed brought up the importance of testing to make sure that these things are ready to go when it is time. And again, the challenges, the lessons of being able to manage those portfolios and how important that is to moving forward. In the world of challenges, we talked about this takes time. You can't, you talk about data center consolidation, it ain't going to happen overnight. It takes planning, it takes efforts, it takes good strategies. We talked about the challenges of consolidation, and the big one that I think we heard from just about everyone was security. That you need to get the security right, and of course that culture issue came up again when we were talking through some of the challenges. And also we talked about complexity. It's just really complicated what's out there in order to bring this all together. The future, we looked at acceleration of the trends. We looked for smaller data centers, less centers, better efficiencies. Mike brought up the governance issue and the importance of idle processes, of having really good processes in place to let us move forward. With that, I want to do a couple thank yous here. First of all, I want to thank all the panelists for taking time to come out today to share your ideas. I also want to thank our sponsors, of course, without which we would not have a program. Thanks especially to our listening audience out there that tune in. And I want to do one special thank you here. Many of you know, many of our listening audience know that Mike Krieger will be retiring at the end of October. Mike has been a wonderful friend and colleague. He certainly has done a tremendous amount for this community. I want to thank Mike publicly with a little shout out here for his contribution to our country, his contribution to the IT community. We certainly wish him all his hopes and dreams for the future come true as he goes to this next stage in life. But I have a feeling, even though he's retiring from government, I think we're still going to see a lot of Mike Krieger and his knowledge. We need that knowledge that he brought to the environment in this community for a long time to come. So Mike, congratulations and thank you for all your service. You've been listening to the Federal Executive Forum on Federal News Radio 1500 AM.